programmers getting replaced. With things like Devin, things are accelerating so fast.
Timelines for AGI.
Perhaps end of next year. If somebody claims that they have reached AGI, how can it be proven? I mean, they just interviewed a woman from OpenAI.
What data was used to train SORA?
We used publicly available data.
Probing her, where do you get your video data from? And she kept saying public sources.
Do you think AI will eventually replace YouTubers?
I think it'll replace some for sure. The release of SORA, they're also gonna put an update out for DALL-E 4.
This is an interview with Phil Starkovich, the co-founder of TubeBuddy and CreativeFuel. We talk about the dark side of AI companies, whether living forever will be possible, how YouTubers should use AI, when OpenAI SORA might get released, and so much more. If you watch the whole thing, you'll have a massive advantage over everyone else. You have more experience in the YouTube space than just about anyone else. So I have to ask, do you think AI will eventually replace YouTubers?
Well, I sure hope not. I think there's always going to be that human connection between creators and the audience. I think it'll replace some for sure, but definitely not all.
Yeah, probably more like the automated kind of faceless content. But I agree with you, like there's a lot of different jobs where the social aspect is actually more valuable than, the economic aspect. Like a lot of people go to the barber to have a chat and have a conversation.
Yeah, there's something different about a human. We're getting close to where it's going to be indistinguishable, but I think you'll always have that connection that you'll get with a human that you can't with AI or a robot.
This is one of the biggest fears that a lot of creators have is, will I even be relevant in 5-10 years or maybe even 3 years? AI is advancing so fast. Now, do you have any timeline? Because this is a hot topic for, timelines for AGI. Everybody has their predictions. Some people think it's 7 months away. Some people think it's decades away. Do you have any rough estimate for yourself?
I would say for myself, I don't consider myself necessarily the AI expert. One thing I actually wanted to ask you is if somebody claims that they have reached AGI, how can it be proven?
To prove it to the outside world would be to do something very impressive, right? I don't know if you've seen the Devin news. Yeah, you've seen it. Yeah, I think that's probably the first version, a very early version of AGI specific to software engineering. It's an autonomous agent that can do a lot of things by itself. So,
if I did have to make a prediction, perhaps end of next year, if I was gonna make a prediction. How about you? Where are you standing?
It's very tough because I definitely see the progress speeding up. So I don't want to be on the slower end. Okay, so it's the start of 2024. Probably if we go the safest end, the most conservative guess, probably 2029, but that's really conservative, I think. For a fast guess, either late 2025 or early 2026, I would say. So for those who are not familiar with your new AI tool, CreativeFuel, can you give us one sentence explanation of what the tool does and how it helps creators?
Sure. So essentially, it's a browser extension that helps train ChatGPT on your channel and audience so that ChatGPT understands what you're trying to accomplish, gives you tailored results. And then it also helps build prompts for you. And so instead of having to, paste in long prompts or manually type in prompts, you just fill out some fields and it generates a consistent prompt to give you great results.
Yeah. I've tested a bunch and I agree. It's definitely one of the best, if not the best, AI tools for creators. By the way, if you want to try CreativeFuel, it's going to be linked in the description. And no, Phil is not paying me to say this. It's just a really cool tool. So go check it out.
Yeah, it's still early, just launching it right now. Hopefully help educate people as well, how to write better prompts and how to actually interact with ChatGPT better.
Obviously, since it's in ChatGPT, it's using either GPT 3.5 or GPT 4. But when you're generating the profile, what LLM are you using there?
We are using 4. So in the background, it's using OpenAI's API to generate the profile.
And have you considered trying the Claude 3 Opus, the biggest one from Anthropic?
Not yet. I think at some point we will. The profile that it generates is used for training on ChatGPT, and it's not extremely complex. We're happy with the results we have right now. We do need some tweaking, obviously. You've pointed a couple of things out that we need to work on.
The tool is used within ChatGPT. It makes sense to have GPT-4 generate the profile as well. I was expecting you would say GPT 3.5 to have a faster speed and maybe save costs. So if you were to use GPT 3.5, then I think Haiku, the smallest model from the Claude 3 family, is actually much better because it's cheaper and a lot smarter than GPT 3.5. But yeah, I agree, GPT-4 is still the king, so.
Yeah, and currently we essentially run it one time when you first link your YouTube channel. So it's not like we're constantly running it, hitting the API a lot. Cost isn't really an issue.
Yeah, makes sense. So AI is completely going to disrupt the job market. What industries and jobs do you think will be hit the hardest?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily hit the hardest, but anything kind of, I think in the legal area, where I think that could be hit the hardest just because lawyers are so expensive. But
Yeah.
what they do is really just looking at text, converting it into the current situation that you're dealing with.
I mean, when you think about it, like lawyers are essentially doing just a rag, like,
Mhm.
looking through a bunch of documents and giving you the most relevant responses, right?
Yeah, which seems right up AI's alley, kind of what it's good at. So,
The only issue I see is that they might be protected a bit by laws and regulations where, a human is still required. I think that's actually going to be like the biggest friction in terms of adaptation. And also like it'll protect some jobs, like doctors and stuff like that. So even if we have like AIs that are more accurate and like better at, spotting diseases or whatever, there will still be like laws and requirements for human to be in the loop. So I think some jobs, maybe even in the legal sector, will be still protected by that like slowness, regulatory slowness. But some like paralegals or like lower level legal jobs, I think, yeah, definitely.
yeah, makes sense.
So looking ahead, how do you predict AI will transform YouTube and content creation over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube, it looks like YouTube's investing a lot into AI and, some of it'll be interesting. They're working on some, video generation right now. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that compares to Sora and other things coming out. But it does look like YouTube itself is investing a lot in AI. There's obviously a lot more faceless channels, and with YouTube Shorts, it's pretty easy to hack together a few AI tools, push out a lot of content. So it does seem like AI is really flooding the YouTube space. Whether that's good or bad, we'll kind of see. But yeah, for the most part, hopefully it'll improve. I think there's gonna be a lot more content. Some of it's gonna be good, some bad. Hopefully
Of
the
course.
cream rises to the top, and we all end up being able to consume better and more content. But there's also just gonna be a lot more garbage too, I think, on YouTube because of AI.
Yeah, I think you're right. The algorithm will filter that out and, the best videos will get recommended. But I also like the observation about Sora because if you think about it, YouTube has the biggest video data set out of anybody. So I think Google has a really unique opportunity here to do something big.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, they just interviewed a woman from OpenAI yesterday, I believe, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you probing her, where do you get your video data from? And she kept saying public sources, but wouldn't get specific.
Yeah.
But about Google having access to YouTube and essentially an endless supply of video content
I
to
mean,
train from.
you've definitely hit on some interesting topic there because every single big AI research lab is scraping data from anywhere they get. I mean, that's really the gold mine. That's the most important part. It's even more important than compute because compute is quickly catching up. I mean, obviously the Nvidia market cap exploded, but the data, I mean, that's required to train the best models. And OpenAI is already scraping the entire internet, and they've like, I don't know how many lawsuits exactly, but they have multiple lawsuits going on right now over, using copyrighted data. So I definitely think they've used some videos from YouTube, like maybe just indirectly, because there's so many like embeddings and stuff like that on the web. I mean, yeah, AI companies are definitely, that's probably the most like shady part of the AI business right now is just the way big AI research labs scrape data and get, images, videos, whatever.
Yeah, and it's all, behind the scenes. Nobody really knows what's going on, it seems like. So you just kind of have no idea what they're actually doing.
Yeah, it's also super hard to prove because with text, especially with images, it's like a little bit easier because I've seen some people prove that it's been trained on artists. When you're like doing some specific prompt inside of Midjourney or DALL-E 3, it could produce a very similar result to a specific image of an artist. So I've seen like lawsuits trying to prove that, but with text, it's like I think nearly impossible.
Yeah, it's true.
It's no secret that AI agents are the next big thing. That's why in 2 days I'm releasing an entire course on how to build and deploy your own AI agent. If that sounds interesting to you, then make sure to join my community. It's the first link in the description. See you inside. Okay, so there are a lot of creators who feel weird about using AI while making their videos. Maybe there's some like limiting beliefs or stigmas about AI. What would you say to those YouTubers who are hesitant to start using AI tools?
Yeah, I think those people are more worried about AI replacing them and need to think of AI as a tool just to help them create content. I mean, just like any other tool. If you're using Photoshop, if you're using Premiere, these are all tools just to help you create content. You're not going to draw individual frames. You can create animations using software. I think AI is just another tool to help you create. And so, if you're not doing it now, I think creators are going to get passed up, and you're not necessarily creating or competing against AI. You're competing
Yeah.
against other creators using AI, and they're just going that much faster. So yeah, I would tell them to consider AI a tool, to dive in there, start learning. Doesn't mean you have to use it. There's so many different tools out there for different aspects of the process of content creation that you just got to start using it, seeing what's out there, and giving it a try.
Yeah, I mean, I've said the same thing to video editors who were worried that AI will replace them. I said, that's not what you should worry about. You should worry about other AI editors who use 5 different AI tools to get like 3 times as much done in the same amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, an editor, yeah, instead of worrying about being replaced, use those tools to, I don't know, get more clients and
Yeah.
results out faster.
Okay, so but what about the people who are like some ethical dilemma that think like, using AI makes the content inauthentic or like plastic or like, whatever. What do you think about those people?
No, I definitely agree with that point in a lot of cases. Even for myself, there's a lot of tools out there that'll, click a button and write an email response. And I personally hate those tools. I've clicked it and it's like, this doesn't sound like me. Even if you try to train it on how you talk, it just feels inauthentic. And so I think if you're trying to build real relationships with people, communicate with people, um, you know, then doing things yourself is definitely the way to go. When it comes to content creation, though, there's just a lot of parts of the process that can be streamlined, automated, um, help spark ideas or, create storyboards, outlines, things like that. It doesn't have to write your specific script, but just
Mm-hmm.
giving you ideas for an outline is, a step in the right direction. So I think, maybe something along those lines, if you're against it, I agree in many cases not to just use what AI gives you, but just let it help, spark some ideas or just create an outline to help you think about things in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Because like big creators like Mr. Beast, they have entire teams who, produce ideas and then he just comes in and chooses the best ones. So obviously the average YouTuber cannot have a 10-person team ideating video ideas. So you can use AI to do that and then choose the ones that you think will fit your channel the best. And like you still have the final say, like you still decide what you make, right? So in that case, it's definitely a time save. And also like with the emails, as you said, it's so obvious when you get ChatGPT generated email, right? It's like, come on, man. It's like you could have put in more effort than that.
Right.
Okay, so right now we have several state-of-the-art language models like GPT-3, Claude 3 Opus, Gemini 1.0 Ultra. In your opinion, which of these top-tier LLMs is best suited for creative writing and brainstorming?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I haven't done enough work with each of them to give a good opinion on that in particular. From what I've seen, other people say, the new Claude 3 seems to be the best. I haven't used it myself in writing content creation, so I might ask you your opinion in this case and see what you have to say, so I can learn.
So I would say probably Claude 3 is best. I mean, strictly talking about creative writing and brainstorming, I don't know why, but I feel like the OpenAI LLMs, they're like kind of restricted in the brainstorming. That they don't feel as like creative and as natural Okay, if I had to say top three, I would say Claude 3 Opus, number one. Number two, Gemini 1.0 Ultra from Google, even though it's like very restricted in some ways, and we've seen the fiasco with the images. For creative writing, if it doesn't reject your prompt, it's good. It's pretty good for creative writing and brainstorming. And then number three, GPT-4. So those are the top three, I would say. But I mean, there isn't like a huge difference, right? It's not like a difference between GPT-4 and GPT-3. It's more like an incremental few percent difference, I would say.
Gotcha. And yeah, I'm looking forward to GPT 4.5 whenever that comes out. If the rumors are true, they came out recently. That is one nice thing that, especially for someone like myself that's building tools on top of ChatGPT, anything they put out that gives better content, ideas, responses, it's just going to help us. So really excited for kind of that next step, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, I guess you're referring to those leaks of the article where when you use DuckDuckGo, it showed like a finished article for GPT 4.5.
Who knows? You can't trust what you see these days, so
Yeah.
maybe not.
I mean, Sam Altman did kind of refer vaguely to some release coming soon, but then again, they have the Elon Musk lawsuit going on, so again, who knows? It could be a few months until we see something. So, as we move to a post-AGI world, what do you think the average person can do to prepare themselves?
This might be another one that I'm going to ask you for your opinions, and this is more your space. I'm just a software developer building tools on top of what's out there. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you this one.
Okay, so I mean, personally, I don't have like a single answer for everybody. It's more about the best advice I can give any individual is to analyze their path, look at their career, what they're doing, because a lot of I have a lot of friends that are my age who are in college. And they're doing degrees that won't even be relevant in 5 years or whenever they graduate. So I think that's the most painful part, is taking like a hard look at the, career path, or not even career. It's like all the things they're doing in the day, whether they will still matter, right? And obviously that's very hard, but I think it's much better to take like a bit of discomfort today than a massive amount of discomfort in 5 years when you found that the last 5 years were essentially wasted. And sure, there are people who love their job and stuff like that, but I'm more talking about the people who pursue some career for good money, right? Well, what if that career doesn't even exist in 5 years? So I think that's probably the best advice I can give anybody, is to like objectively analyze your current path and what you're doing, and just try to learn about AI as much as possible, obviously, and see whether those things will be even relevant, because a lot of them will not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess in my field, I do programming, but I also have run the companies that I do programming within. And with things like Devin and potentially programmers getting replaced, it's more about building the right products for the right people, and it's more, you kind of have to go a level up from programmer to actually builder, thinking about the software, who's it for, building the right interfaces, and thinking through solving problems, and not necessarily just being in the code, writing code all day. It's more about the bigger ideas of helping people solve problems.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm a programmer as well, obviously not on your level, but personally, I like when it comes to like rating how good of a programmer someone is, to me, it's much more impressive how much you've built with programming, how much you've actually accomplished, instead of how many languages you know. Like if you memorized all the syntax in 7-8 different languages, like to me, the best programmers are the people who actually create a product that people want to use. And I think right now, as you alluded to it, AI will just allow more and more people to build stuff, even those who aren't like super advanced, assembly programmers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've dealt with a lot of that. And again, kind of the whole builder versus people that argue about tech stack and what they're doing. I've actually, after, I ran TubeBuddy for 5 or 6 years. I got acquired, and we were still using the same programming languages that I had used 20 years ago. I've actually just recently started to learn some new things, just for fun, to kind of expand my knowledge. But if I want to get something built quickly, I still just jump back to what I know. And I have the most fun just being able to work quickly and not have to deal with new languages and things like that.
Tell me more about that, because a lot of my audience are actually programmers. So which languages did you use at TubeBuddy and which you are learning now?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so TubeBuddy is a browser extension, and pretty much the entire extension is just essentially jQuery. So plain JavaScript, jQuery, nothing advanced. And we had millions of users. It held up just fine. On the back end, I'm a .NET C# developer, so everything, which to date myself, I don't know, 25 years ago or something, back in Visual Basic days, kind of used those up to C#, and so all .NET backend. And then recently, so after the acquisition, I decided to learn Swift and iPhone programming, and so I ended up building a little meditation app just for fun. And then one of the guys I work with kind of forced React on us, which I've always been opposed to React because it was this big mindset shift. And so I'm almost a year into learning React and getting used to it. It's fun. Some days I hate it. But yeah, so I guess newer things, which, I suppose React is probably old now, but it's new for me. And so that's where I'm at.
I actually learned programming on C#, so that was my first language, and I've built a mobile game with it. But now, obviously, since AI is so big in Python, I'm using Python most. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, Python's something I've actually never written a single line of code in. I probably should start learning and playing around with it a little bit.
I mean, it's like the most beginner-friendly language, I would say. Like the syntax is super easy to understand. I mean, like in programming, if you know the basic fundamental concepts, you can translate them into any other language,
Yeah, and with ChatGPT now,
Yeah, exactly.
it'll write it for you and step you along each step of the way.
I mean, I've made multiple videos like build anything with ChatGPT, and I always explain to people like, you don't have to know anything to start. You can always ask ChatGPT to explain what a for loop is, or what I don't know, arrays are, like whatever. And people are always in the comments like, well, but you clearly know some programming, or like you did this on minute 17. Like, just ask it. Like, it can explain anything. Like,
That's funny. I mean, that reminds me. That's how we connected. Is I've been learning game programming recently for the iPhone, and I was looking up a way to animate a static image, and ran across one of your videos where you use ChatGPT to output
yeah.
bright grids, made it, and things like that.
That's interesting because that video was kinda at like 1,000 views for a while, but recently it started picking up. So it's very interesting how YouTube works.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the most creative and unexpected ways you've seen creators use AI to make better videos?
I'd say, I don't know, one particular product that I think is really interesting is, I believe it's called Descript, where it'll take your audio, transcribe it to text, and then you can edit the text, and it'll actually edit the audio, and you can take out words, you can add words just by editing the text script. It's trained on your voice. So I felt like that was super creative and well done, where you can essentially edit text. It changes the audio of your video.
By the way, if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing. It really helps out a lot, and it lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. If you did subscribe, thank you.
Like we've talked about, faceless channels, kind of the whole automation process is interesting. I don't necessarily love it. If they're putting out good content that people like, it's fine. I do think it's kind of fun and interesting, just a challenge to see, can you automate the whole process of writing the script, generating, the video, putting it all together, publishing it. So I do kind of respect it in that sense, that they're just kind of figuring out ways to automate it. So I think faceless channels is probably another way.
But I think you like YouTube and TikTok actually are a bit cracking down on that like super low effort content. So either like completely Like on TikTok, there is this concept of like 200 views hell, where all of your, TikToks get like 200 views, just like the algorithm tests it, and then it never blows up. So like a lot of faceless channels get in that, and then basically like if you're in there for multiple months, you almost have to create a new account, because then TikTok is like, okay, this account posts low quality content, so don't recommend it.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know YouTube is kind of cracking down on monetization and things like that, and having to put this AI content.
Yeah, this is definitely true, because one of my friends is running like a MMA channel, and even though he's making his own content, he had some like old shorts back in the day where he just reposted some Joe Rogan clips, right? So even if you look at his channel now, all of his videos include his face, his opinions, his research. So it's a completely normal channel. But back in the day, he had like some shorts that were like less effort. And when he applied for monetization, when he hit 4,000 watch hours, he got actually rejected, because the algorithm spotted that some of them were like copyrighted, and then a human reviewer looked at the channel and found some shorts that were lower effort, and he got rejected for that, even though like most of his videos are legit. So
is that something where you can just delete them and reapply? Do you know?
but like even then, like it shows that there is like some sort of a initiative from YouTube to like not want this super low quality content spamming their platform. So if you had to choose just 3 AI tools you could use for the rest of your life, which would they be?
I'm going to choose, I guess, first off, ChatGPT is just kind of my default. Kind of does a little bit of everything. It's my comfort blanket. You just go there and you just kind of know what to ask, what kind of responses you're going to get. It's not necessarily the best, but I feel like it's still the easiest, and just I know what to expect and what I'm going to get out of it. And OpenAI seems to be leader in the space, so I'm sticking with that one. I don't use Midjourney a ton, but I do feel like on the image side, hopefully video side someday, they'd be my go-to, just because they seem so reliable and cutting edge. Seems like a good company too. I might leave a third spot open and see what comes up in the future. I don't want to reserve it right now. I'm gonna hang on for my third spot for a couple years and
That's smart.
save it. Gates. How about you? What are your 3 right now?
I mean, I know I mentioned Claude 3 multiple times, but I definitely think ChatGPT is still the best. I mean, given the amount of things you get for a single subscription, it's kind of crazy, right? Like obviously GPT-4, but you also get DALL-E 3, which is amazing images. Obviously not as customizable as Midjourney, because in Midjourney you have a lot more control and you can create a lot more variations. But for most people, like DALL-E 3 is more than sufficient. And you also get Code Interpreter, which I think none of the other big AI tools have. And that's like huge for not just programming, but like testing math, and you can do so many things with code, right? And I mean, it's basically in the background. I mean, not many people realize how it works, but it's running a Jupyter notebook in the background, so it can like test and install packages and test a bunch of things. So Code Interpreter is huge. You can also like create visualizations, analyze spreadsheets. Like there's so many ways you can save time with that. You also get the GPT store, obviously, where you can create your own GPTs or access GPTs made by others. You also have like the old plugins, which I mean, not many people use anymore. But like the amount of features you get for a single subscription, I definitely think ChatGPT is still the best. So what would be on my next top 3? I mean, probably Perplexity, number 2, because it's the best research-wise. I mean, obviously, for the LLM, they have their own proprietary LLMs, but they are not like state of the art. But you can like they have all the APIs in the settings, so you can choose GPT-4, you can choose Gemini, you can choose Claude 3, whatever you want to use, and that's another like super good. Like it's the same cost, it's $20 a month, but like the amount of value you get, and especially that you can test all the different LLMs in a single subscription, I definitely think that would be my number 2. Okay, number 3. I mean, probably Midjourney. I don't know. There is a lot of AI tools now out there. I mean, yeah, I'll go with Midjourney because like anytime I need to generate a really good AI image and I need to really customize it, as I said, like DALL-E 3 is really good, but the issue with DALL-E 3 is that actually ChatGPT writes the prompt. So it's not using your prompt, because in the system prompt of ChatGPT, it's like there is literally like half of the system prompt is spent on DALL-E free instructions. So you give it sentence, and then ChatGPT rewrites that into a longer DALL-E free prompt. So you're not actually like, there's like a middleman, right? You're not actually creating what exactly you wanted. In Midjourney though, you have complete control over the content, and all the images are a result of your prompt. So yeah, I mean, Midjourney is definitely my favorite AI image tool right now, and has been for a while.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It looked like with the release of Sora, they're also gonna put an
Yeah.
update out for DALL-E, maybe DALL-E 4. I don't know, whatever they're gonna call it. I'm excited there just for improvements, because it does definitely seem like it's lagging a little bit behind the others, like Midjourney, on the image side.
Do you think they'll give us Sora before the 2024 election?
I would say yes. It sounded like the timeline was towards the end of the year. So, I mean, the election's at the end of the year. That is a good question, and that's definitely I'm sure, a concern of a lot of people. But I'm thinking yes. How about you?
Like initially I thought no, because Sam Altman said on multiple times like he doesn't want his AI tools to interfere with the election. So like releasing anything that's like substantially better, whether that's GPT-5 or Sora, would potentially like go against that statement. But if you think about it, what not many people realize is that they will put restrictions on it. Like there will be guidelines, and I think they'll just like go super hard on the limits where you literally cannot create images of politicians or celebrities. But I think specifically on the politicians, I think they will go like super hard on there and like restrict all the main presidential candidates, so that like there is no way to hack it. So if they do that properly, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like restrictions like that, but from their point of view, it's kind of necessary. So if they do that properly, I think they could release it before, because so many people want it, and it's been like what? It's been over a month since the Sora release, so that's like over a year in the AI space. So it's been forever, right?
Yeah, and if it's not this election, it'll definitely be by the next election.
Yeah.
So it's really only a matter of time. So I don't know. I'm honestly, I feel not even too concerned one way or the other, because it's definitely going to happen for future elections anyway. So if it starts now or a little bit in the
Yeah.
future, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually an argument to be made that it's better to release it now. That way people and governments and companies get used to it and like see it in action, rather than like trying to do a massive big release in the future where you don't have any market data, right?
Right.
So there is a lot of skepticism about whether language models can truly be creative, or if they're just remixing training data in clever ways. What's your perspective? Are models like GPT capable of real creativity or not?
I would say right now it's more of a remix. I would hope eventually it gets to a point where it feels more like true creativity. Just from my testing, like our particular product, for example, like coming up with video ideas, it seems to do a good job, and but it also feels more of a remix than true creativity. It does feel like eventually, though, it'll get to a point where it'll feel more human-like, more real creativity. I guess when you first used ChatGPT, when everybody first used it, it was just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the most amazing thing, and super creative. But the more you use it, the more you see patterns, and not the same content, but just kind of patterns on how it thinks and how it gives results, and just makes it feel a little less creative. So I think the more you use it, the less true creativity it feels, and the more it feels like remixing. But I would think as it improves over time, we'll get to that point.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, because the first time, like especially people who are new to AI, when they try it, it's like wow, right? It seems creative, but you have to think about how much data there is on the internet. So it might actually be like combining stuff that's written in some obscure Reddit post from 10 years ago that a person wrote, but obviously you've never read that, so it might seem creative in that sense, but you don't know if it's from the training data or if it's something novel, right? So yeah, I definitely agree. And like the basic version of ChatGPT, like from my experience, is like really bad at creative video ideas. So I think that's why there is a need for a product like CreativeFuel to provide some good prompts, some good templates, and like guide the LLM in a direction to be more useful and more creative, even if it's like pseudo creative, right?
Right. Yeah, and you know, one nice thing is like what we're trying to do is also pull in some more real-time data and look at
Yeah.
which particular has been successful on your channel or, you know, a channel in your niche and pull those in, just like you said, to help guide it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that would be huge. And do you think the LLM architecture, do you think like in terms of the creativity, if we're going to achieve something truly creative, something that no human or no LLM, whatever, basically something that isn't anywhere else on the internet, do you think we need a new architecture for that, or do you think LLMs are good enough?
That one probably goes beyond my knowledge. There are technologies that are actively being worked on outside of LLMs that are seeing promise or potential right now.
I mean, I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to AI architecture, so I'll probably like default the answer to what Jan LeCun thinks, because I've recently watched his Lex Friedman interview, and he's the guy he's basically the head of AI at Meta. So he's one of the three godfathers of deep learning. So like he's been in the field for 40 years or some crazy amount, right? So he's a complete pioneer there, and he thinks that like autoregressive LLMs, so language models that like, you know, predict based on the next word, so it cannot lead somewhere that's like completely unrelated, right? Like if there is no representation of that in the training data, it cannot lead you from like, let's say a super simple example, from a car to a blanket, like completely unrelated words, right? So autoregressive LLMs, according to his view, can never be truly creative purely because they are, you know, regressing. They're predicting the next word based on the previous word. So in that sense, they cannot come up with a novel idea. So I don't know, like personally, as I said, I'm definitely not an expert, but if I were to say, I think there's going to be like a mix of, you know, transformers, LLMs, and some new architecture. But who knows how that looks like? This is the hard part of predicting, right? Because that could be like a bottleneck that takes 10 years, or it could be something that's solved in 6 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, everything changes so quickly and you just kind of never know what's next these days. It is an exciting time to see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you, like, going from exciting to the other side, what do you believe is the most significant threat posed by AI, and what can we do to address it?
I mean, one particular thing, just like we talked about a little earlier, you know, potentially deep fakes, things like that around elections. So definitely concerned with, you know, I'm sure everyone has gotten tricked once or twice so far on AI produced videos, especially images. So, you know, figuring out how to manage that, I think is going to be very important. I think there's also, you know, if there's particular, you know, bad actors that want to build a or something, you know, you can go on and not ChatGPT, but an unregulated LLM and, you know, potentially figure out very quickly how to do bad things. So, you know, the internet gave you access to kind of all this information. And now LLMs are kind of walking you through the steps and giving you exactly what you need based on what you ask it for. So I think, you know, just as it can help speed up good, it can also help, you know, speed up the bad side of the world. So those are two particular things I would say I'm concerned about.
So, like, the argument people would say against that would be like, if somebody wanted to do something criminal, right? They can still search it up through Google, DuckDuckGo, stuff like that. So obviously, like, the LLM would save them time. But if someone was like really committed to doing something illegal, they could still do it. So, do you think like the downside for the like good people, because most people are not like criminals, right? So basically, do you think like restricting justifies like limitations for everybody else?
Yeah, not necessarily. I definitely lean towards fewer restrictions, and you know, there's always going to be bad people in the world, and like you said, they'll figure things out one way or another. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to restrict everybody. I definitely think the good of AI is going to outweigh the negative. So I definitely lean towards less restrictive, and I'm fine with ChatGPT being more restrictive or some of the bigger ones that are more broadly used. But there's always going to be ways for people to get access to LLMs that aren't as restrictive too. So I think there can be a balance, but I would lean towards being less restrictive myself.
Yeah, I'm definitely optimistic as well, and I think like people are by nature good. Like if you were to look at the percentages, right? I think 99.9% of ChatGPT prompts are harmless, right? It's not people trying to do something illegal. So I'm definitely with you there. But like I feel like there is like this growing sense of pessimism in the AI space where a lot of people are like seriously pessimistic, just negative about the future. Like why do you think that is?
Probably the fear of the unknown. Things are accelerating so fast, and you know, I think it's mostly just the unknown, just people not knowing where it's all leading, can make you feel uneasy, can make you nervous. Yeah, I mean, they don't know what's going to happen. Nobody essentially knows
Yeah.
what things are going to look like in 5 years, and so some people that's exciting. They're optimistic, kind of in nature, but some people are pessimistic in nature and might just focus on the downsides or think about the problems it's going to solve instead of thinking about what problems it will be able to solve. So I think it just might come down to personality and nature of the people and kind of the unknowns.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
obviously I think it's good to look at both the positives and negatives. So I mean, I don't
Mhm.
have personally a problem with like people who feel are more pessimistic about the future. But what I do have problem with is that a lot of those people kind of default to like, oh, there is nothing we can do, or like we just wait until AGI comes and wipe us all out, right? And like, sure, it's a small minority, like less than 5%, I would say, but like they're super vocal. So sometimes it feels like it's 70% of the people. And it makes sense because if they seriously believe that AI is going to kill us all, like you want to talk about it, you want others to know that, right?
True. Yeah. Makes sense.
So back to content creation, what do you think will be like the next big AI breakthrough that will totally revolutionize how creators make content? Is it AI videos like Sora, or maybe is it like a perfect real-time translation to every single language? What do you think?
I would go more towards Sora. I think being able to generate videos, from text prompts, getting B-roll, things like that are going to be huge. And I think some of the newer things coming out where you can essentially create a character and then keep that character across different
Yep.
images or video. I think that's going to be you know huge once that really gets dialed in. And that's something I've kind of worked on, game programming, things like that. I used AI to build some game, graphic assets, but you can't really keep the same character across multiple, it's very difficult to kind of keep the same character, same theme, everything across different aspects of the game. So I think in content creation, once you can build like a consistency from the output, that's going to be big. Um, and yeah, I think Sora, kind of like you were saying, is just going to revolutionize things.
Yeah, I mean, Midjourney, the latest Midjourney update actually did massive progress in that consistent characters issue. And obviously, it's still not perfect. Like, if you look closely enough, you can see like maybe the bones are slightly different or whatever. But like if you look at the first glance, it's definitely better than in the past. And yeah, I mean, it's a matter of time, right? Probably in the next 3 to 6 months, that will be solved perfectly. And then for thumbnails, for stories, like that will be so huge, right? Especially when you can take the image and then plug it into a image to video tool and create like scenes, right? From Runway ML, for example, or Pika Labs, like that would be huge for storytelling. And like, for example, YouTube Kids, I think, will be full of that content, right? Because obviously kids don't really care, but like how difficult is it to manually animate versus create something with Midjourney and then, animate it? I think that would be, and
Yeah.
also in video game assets, like a lot of game developers just want to build the game, and a lot of them aren't like 3D modelers or sprite designers or whatever. So I think if you can use the AI tools to speed that up and create textures in a matter of few minutes instead of few days, like that would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that day personally, as I'm building things out and having to come up with sprites and animations too.
Yeah, I mean, every single NPC in every single game will have like their own LLM running them. So like World of
Uh-huh.
Warcraft, you can talk to the quest master and it will be GPT-4 powered, and you can actually have a real conversation with it, right? Rather than like pre-selected dialogue.
Right. Yeah.
So you're building an AI tool, which right now is a totally ruthless market, super competitive. Why do you
Yeah.
think most AI tools fail? Is it a bad idea? Is it overcomplicated UI? What do you think?
I think it's a mix of a few different things. One thing I've noticed across different tools is the unpredictability of output from AI. And it's something we've struggled with ourselves. And um, you kind of never know what you're going to get. Some days you love the responses you get from AI, and um, other days you're like, what is this? It's not what I asked for. So I think consistency is a big thing where, before AI, traditional programming, there's kind of inputs and outputs,
Yeah.
and it's all repeatable. You know what you're going to get. With AI, you don't know what's coming back. You feed in a prompt and you ask for things, and you may or may not get what you're looking for. So I think that's a big issue right now, and that's going to improve over time. But just the inconsistency in results, and then the software in general, just making sure you're actually solving someone's problems and making it easier for them. Um, it's really easy to add an AI logo to your product and embed some sort of AI, but is it actually helping people? Is it something people want? Is another question. So um, yeah, I think companies are adding AI just so they can say they have AI, and then there's also just the unpredictability that I've found as far as like getting the output you want.
I mean, when you mentioned that, I obviously started thinking of solutions, but the issue is
Mhm.
that right now you're building on top of ChatGPT, which has the temperature of zero point 0.7. So to get like the most consistent outputs, you would do temperature 0, which is like the least creative, but the most consistent. So if you were to feed it like, the good titles that you want to emulate, that would be ideal. But then again, if you were to go 0, you would sacrifice some of that creativity or pseudo creativity. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's downsides
definitely a
to both.
balance there. Yeah.
So, as an entrepreneur in the AI field, what are some unpopular opinions you hold about AI in general?
All right. Looking at Sora, for example, I might be a little skeptical that it's ever going to get to the point where you type in a prompt, and maybe I was this way with Midjourney too, just for plain images. It's never going to be perfect. Um, but I feel like Midjourney, image-wise, is almost perfect now. It's really gotten to the point where it's like, wow. Um, I'm still skeptical that we'll get to that point with video. So, it I know we're still early, but I'll say we're not going to get to that point in video where you're consistently getting the results you want based on text prompts.
And why do you think that is? Like, because the obvious argument would be like a video is just a series of images, right?
True, but there are a series of connected images, and there's the flow between the images. Every frame has to match the previous, and the full output has to flow and look natural. And the ones they put out have been amazing, but I'm still skeptical that it'll get to the point of where Midjourney is for images. That it's very crisp, and you're not seeing six fingers on people's hands type things.
Yeah. I think
We'll see.
either way, it will be like more than good enough for people, for YouTubers to use it, because what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Like paying some expensive, stock footage subscription, like even image subscriptions, right? If you look at Getty Images, the prices are
Yeah.
insane, like up to like
Yeah.
$600 for a single picture, right? Like some rare historical pictures. So if you
Yeah.
can use AI tools to create that image or that stock footage video, like that would be just amazing, right? And even let's say like Envato Elements is pretty affordable, but still like you have to go there and you have to search for the right video. It's much better
Yeah.
if you just type out the prompt, exactly what you're envisioning, and you get that, right away, and you can use it. And it's original, never before used, because all the other results would be like stuff that's in thousands of other YouTube videos, right? So people kind of get tired of that once they see the same visual dozens of times. So I think, definitely Sora and like other AI video tools will be huge. Even if they're not perfect, I think all they have to be is like good enough for people to use them over stock footage, right?
B-roll, things like that.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
definitely see that for sure.
So what does your current team look like at CreativeFuel? How many people do you have, and which positions are you prioritizing right now?
So with CreativeFuel, there's only 3 of us working on it. Kind of 3 of the core founders at TubeBuddy, actually. And with TubeBuddy, our team got up to 13 people total when we were acquired. I believe there's 40 plus now, 30, 40. But this time around, I definitely, and one of the reasons why I sold TubeBuddy is because I spent a lot of time managing the company and people, and I really just wanted to get back to programming, which is what I enjoy, building out the product. So this time around, we're intentionally trying not to hire any employees and just kind of see what we can do as a small team and keep it light and easy. So for CreativeFuel in particular, trying to keep it small this time. Just 3 of us as of now.
I mean, it's almost more impressive if you build something with a lean team than to blow it up and then, that was like super painful to downsize later. Airbnb made that mistake, obviously, and like it was a huge cost to them. Just with 13 people, it's still impressive because like I think I've read some statistic like over 20 million different YouTubers have used it. So like that's still huge.
Yeah, thank you.
It also reminded me the same issue had, I don't know if you know Ondrej. He's like the main guy who built the Tesla autopilot, and he's like one of the most popular AI researchers in the field. So he's basically like the same in terms of he just wanted to build and program, but when he was at Tesla and they were building autopilot back in 2015, 2016, super early, right? He was there with like few people, right? But then as he started building the team, he found himself doing more and more managing and less building and programming. So I think that's a similar story here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been nice going back. I definitely miss a lot of things about having a team and having a successful product. It's hard starting from scratch again, but it's also rewarding trying to build something from nothing. So we'll see how it goes.
Right now, it's pretty clear that AI will be the most revolutionary technology of all time and completely change the world. But when is the first time you personally realized that AI will change the world?
I think it was probably just with ChatGPT. Just silly things. Seeing people post online where you can have it write a script for the Office TV show and like tell them, implement different aspects, and then it writes a whole script and ties it all together at the end. Just seeing that output and being a programmer and knowing what I've seen programmers do in the past, it was really just unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and just blew my mind, kind of at the possibilities. So just, I think early on, silly things in ChatGPT, having it, write a poem and as Hulk Hogan, or different voices and things, just kind of opened up so many possibilities early on, I think.
Yeah, I think you agree. I agree with you that the programmers and the people with technical background actually found it more impressive than the average person because, as you said, if you program something, you expect an exact same result every single time. So to see something be generative is like completely different paradigm.
Yeah, it was pretty mind-blowing.
So you've interacted with thousands of creators over the years. From your experience, what separates the successful YouTubers from the struggling ones?
A couple of things. One is creators that can connect with their audience seem to have a much longer lifespan, and instead of just creating the content, kind of building the relationships and community, especially these days, is so important. A lot of people, if you're doing tech reviews, there's going to be 1,000 people putting out a review of the same item. But if you've kind of built that relationship with your audience and community and spend the time to kind of put out what they want, that definitely seems like a big indicator if somebody's going to be successful or not, is if they're able to kind of build that connection with their audience. And then I think just like similar to software, I would say in some aspects, but kind of ensuring you're doing what you love and creating content that you enjoy and that you're passionate about goes a long way, and it'll make sure you can, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So being able to stick around and stay, excited about the content, I think is huge. So there's a lot of people that'll start creating content about something they're passionate about, and then they just get burnt out. It's got to be something you truly enjoy. Otherwise, it's not going to last long.
Yeah, I mean, the marathon sprint analogy is literally perfect because so many people get like baited by some trend that works right now, and they start doing it, and it increases their views. Maybe they double, triple, 5x their views, and they do it for a few months, maybe 6 months, and then they maybe the trend starts to die down, or maybe it still continues, but they found themselves like completely hating the content they make, but they cannot go back to the stuff they did before because the new audience doesn't want that anymore. So yeah, I think a lot of people, as you said, like don't take a long enough approach and just see like what's getting views now, and completely disregard the long term. Because like if you look at the biggest creators, they have evergreen videos that can get views for years. Like a lot of people don't realize it. Like sure, MrBeast gets 100 million views per video, like 130 or whatever, right? But most of his views are actually from older videos that are like 2, 3, 4 years older. Like total monthly views, like from all that catalog of evergreen content, that's just insane compounding. But if everybody's making short-term hits all the time and no evergreen stuff in between, then you cannot really reach that level. I mean, obviously not that level, but even like, a million plus level. Yeah.
Right. It gets a little spikes, but you're not going to see that continual growth over time.
Definitely. So what are your thoughts on open source AI? Do you think like it needs to be regulated and, kind of banned because of, evil people or like bad actors? Or do you think it's actually the way forward and it will have like a more of a positive impact?
I saw, thanks to you, Elon's going to open source Grok. Thanks to your tweet, right? You asked him to, and he did it.
So yeah, I take full credit.
I like having both. I like having open source LLMs and products that people can tinker with and see what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm also fine with OpenAI being closed AI as an option too. So I like both paths and letting people decide what they want to use. And I would hope ultimately that the open source wins out because of the transparency and everybody kind of seeing what's going on. And I think in life in general, transparency is a good thing, openness. So, you can kind of get better results that way. So I hope open source wins, but I like having both options available.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like a binary world, right? We'll probably have some level of both.
Mm-hmm.
So you grew TubeBuddy to millions of users. What's the single most important leadership lessons you've learned during that journey?
I think the biggest thing for TubeBuddy, just as far as its growth, was building good relationships with YouTube educators and experts in the community. And so, we had a great affiliate program where we'd give 50% recurring revenue, and just being very gracious and helpful to all of our affiliates and marketers. So the biggest thing I think was us treating people well. And, contrary to a lot of businesses, we never tried to maximize our profit. Like the company did extremely well. It was making more money than we needed, and we didn't try to squeeze every dollar out of it. We wanted to give back. We wanted to treat people well. And I think building that trust and being honest with customers just went a long way and just built this really solid foundation. So I think it was, establishing trust, treating people well, listening to feedback, especially negative feedback. We really focused on hearing what problems people had with the product or how it could be improved. It's easy for people to say, "Oh, we love it, it's great," but we were more interested in what could be improved and what was wrong and what problems they were having with the product. So I think, yeah, kind of building that foundation really helped us, and just kind of treating customers well.
You mentioned that affiliate program. I think you're doing the
Mhm.
same thing with CreativeFuel, right? Like
Yeah.
50% for life, that's like the best it ever gets, right? Like most people give you like 20% for the first sign up, right? And that's all you get. But like the incentive needs to be there for people to promote it. So I definitely think that's a wise move.
Yeah, and you know, it's probably doesn't, maybe not, doesn't make the most sense financially for us, but at least personally, I always thought about it as, you know, worst case scenario, someone else's life is better because they're making more money and maybe I'm making a little less. So like the worst possible scenario is somebody else is a little bit happier. So it's not a bad thing that we didn't necessarily maximize every dollar.
Plus, you always get the users, right? Because if that person is making more money, they're more incentivized to promote it in more of their videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
So every other day we see AI startups and companies raising insane amounts of money in their founding rounds. Did you decide to raise venture capital for CreativeFuel, or are you completely bootstrapped?
Completely bootstrapped. Same with TubeBuddy. You know, TubeBuddy, we started it at the end of 2014, but for years before that, we had other smaller projects. It was almost kind of like a snowball effect where built a few products that were making money so I could build bigger things and kind of invest the early money into the newer projects. And yeah, I've never raised money for any products. At least personally, it always felt like it went against the idea of why I wanted to run my own company and work for myself. I wanted to be able to make any decision I wanted, you know, not maximize profits necessarily, like I was just talking about. And if you're backed by VC, it's all about the money. And so I didn't want to have to report to anybody. I'd rather, you know, work at a company for a steady job, I think, than be funded and have to maybe sacrifice the user's wants and needs to make more money for someone else. I don't know. So yeah, always been bootstrapped. I think it's just kind of my personality too. I'm more low key. I'm not trying to take over the world. I'm just trying to, you know, make products that help people.
I mean, that's actually a really good point about like the being your own boss, right? I think that's why we see so many people from Silicon Valley do a startup and then like completely go the other way, like become a monk in India or whatever, right? Because like they are their own boss, but then they do multiple series funds of rounds of funding, and you know they have multiple VCs, multiple investors. They have to keep up. Maybe if they go public, it's even worse because then they have a board, shareholders, and like the expectation is so much, and they cannot just take even like a month off, right? Because if you're a publicly traded company, every quarter you have to hit goals. So yeah, I mean that's a really good point about staying in control, and I think a lot of people lose the reason why they even became an entrepreneur in the first place by the pursuit of just scaling at a fast pace.
Yeah, and I think that pressure would affect my decisions too. I think I make worse decisions if I'm like doing it for someone else versus kind of how I truly feel and the decision I want to make. So I think it would have, you know, ultimately lead to worse products too, because I'm not building necessarily what I think is best for the user. I'm building something for, you know, the people that funded the product.
Yeah. So if we look at CreativeFuel 10 years from now, in a dream scenario, where do you see the company and what milestones do you want to achieve?
Yeah. Kind of like I said, this time around, still want to keep it small. Right now, it's built for ChatGPT. I think, you know, soon we'll want to be able to have it run on Claude or Gemini or kind of any whatever LLM somebody's using, making it less focused on ChatGPT and available across different platforms. Potentially integrate into, you know, sites like YouTube itself. I'm still personally hesitant about that because TubeBuddy is a browser extension. I don't want to compete with my old company. I really like everyone there. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes or anything. There could be a few little things here and there on YouTube's side. I think it would be best if we did that, but I'm also, you know, trying to balance things there, and I don't love going back and having any sort of competitive nature with my old company too. But in 10 years, I think there's potentially a limit to how much we can build and improve the product, and it's hard with how much AI is changing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. In 10 years, it's probably not going to exist, to be honest, because
Yeah.
you know, these other companies themselves will probably have similar things, and but we'll keep evolving. Same thing when we were building TubeBuddy on YouTube. We would build a feature, and then YouTube would copy it, and we just have to come up with something new. And so it's just a continuous cycle of building things out people wanted, and if as a browser extension, if the parent company builds the same thing, you just gotta stay one step ahead and build something new. So we'll keep pushing along as long as we can, building out new things.
You hit a really good point. Like in 10 years, maybe OpenAI won't even exist, right?
Yeah. It's hard to, I mean, myself personally, I don't plan too far in advance. Even on the business side, some people in the business would say like, let's get our, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan. But I'm always just thinking like the next few weeks out. I have trouble planning more than maybe 2 months out because plans always change, things change, and I feel like a lot of time is wasted on planning something too far in advance that's just going to change.
Yeah, a lot of people do too much planning and strategizing and not enough action.
Right, yeah.
So if a creator wants to improve their videos using AI today, where would you recommend them start? Is it with titles? Is it with video ideas, with thumbnails? Like, what do you think is currently the best use for AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few things that aren't quite there yet. I feel like thumbnails is going to be huge someday. Currently, it's really difficult to get a quality thumbnail without a lot of editing after it's
Yeah.
built. You have to generate and then bring it into Photoshop. I think someday that'll be great. I think to start now, though, just content ideas is a great place. It's very easy to go in, ask for ideas, start going down different paths. And it's something that will more spark ideas and not necessarily implementing directly like a thumbnail would, or improving a title or using an exact title. But I think just expanding, it'll really help expand your brain and brainstorming, just coming up with ideas. That's where I would start. There's so many places along the way that AI can improve and help, but at the very beginning is where I would start personally.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Like, especially if you give it some good examples, it can create like ideas you that were like obvious, but you like, how did I not see this, right? Maybe take your most popular video, feed it in there, like give me 5 more variations. Just that could be huge, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of things like we're working on personally on CreativeFuel in particular, where something like you just mentioned, something where we can pull in the latest news trends or trends on YouTube and look at those, and since it knows about your channel and your audience, it frames it, looks at what's happening, what's trending, how can I create content related to this trend that would resonate with my audience, things like that.
Yeah, I think that would be huge, especially if you did like the entire like thumbnail plus title. And obviously that would have to be like probably pop up on the side because the main window is limited. But I think the more visual would be really good. If you saw like, obviously Mr. Beast style or more like Sam Sulek style, and just like multiple styles, and then the people can click through them and like choose what, or like even better specific to their niche. So if someone in tech, it would be like Linus Tech Tips or Marcus Brownlee or whatever, right? And they could like customize the video with more visuals. I think that would be huge.
Yeah, it's all fun. That's the stuff I love, is kind of figuring that out and playing around and getting people in there using it.
And also another thing, I think if you figure this out, it would be like completely revolutionary, is somehow people taking their scripts. Well, you can actually probably automate that because YouTube gives you the transcript of older videos. Yeah. But ideally just, you have a script for your next video or even just talking points. and the AI would kind of analyze it and see like this is potentially a more boring part, or this is a little bit repetitive, or give you suggestions like, have you thought about connecting to this, stuff like that. Because like even if you can improve the AVD by 3%, 5%, that alone can have massive improvement on the views, right? Like it's not a linear, like 5% could be the difference between like 10k views and 100k views easily. So I think if you figure out a really easy way for people to improve their AVDs by having the AI suggest talking points and like optimizing intros and stuff like that, I think that'll be huge.
Yeah, that's one thing we've discussed a little bit, but haven't gotten into yet. And I'm kind of curious how it's going to go, because I'm still at some point skeptical of how good ChatGPT is at that analysis. Like it'll tell you what to do confidently.
Yeah.
But is it actually going to improve? I guess we'll have to see. So, but yeah, I'm excited to try to implement things like that. And it's only going to get better too. So
as you said, like it's only going to improve, right? So even if GPT-4 is kind of whatever, GPT 4.5 or GPT-5 will be much better. So like if you're prepared for that launch, like you'll be set, right? There is a lot of doom and gloom out there, but what's the most exciting, optimistic vision you have for AI in the long run?
I guess I'm excited and hopeful, maybe on the medicine side and kind of helping with health. Um, it seems like there's a lot, I haven't like dove into it much, but it does feel kind of on the health side, screening, finding cancers, maybe cures for different diseases, where you can just pass in tons of data and images and have AI do this analysis that we couldn't really do before. So I think personally, advances in health is where I'm excited about.
So a follow-up question on that. Do you think eventually we'll be able to extend our lifespans to like 200 plus years? And do you think we'll be able to like reach immortality?
It's a good question. I guess eventually, yes. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are talking about it, working on it, and have hope. So I'm going to stay on the optimistic side and say yes. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If the world can handle immortality, I guess by that point, maybe Elon will have us on Mars and we'll be able to, live in other places. But I'm going to stay optimistic and say yes.
Yeah, I think that idea is like completely like mind bending. Like most people can't even wrap their head around, and like they have this negative emotional reactions like, well, obviously not, like I don't want to do that. But I think like the first step is obviously extending lifespan. So I think the right question, like if I were to ask the average person, I would say like, well, would you want to live to 400 assuming perfect health and your looks from young age? And I think 95, like more than 90% of people would say yes to that. So I think a lot of people, like, even though they might be refusing to, accept the idea of that living forever might be possible. Obviously, we still don't know. But I think the first step is like, reaching average age of 150, because currently the average age is actually declining in the West. So yeah. Okay, so AI art is getting scary good. Some people say it's not real art since a machine made it. What's your take on AI art? Do you think AI images are legitimate art, or do you think it's not art?
I would say legitimate art. It doesn't mean that I don't feel bad for the actual artist that it's being trained on. I don't necessarily want to get into the ethics of all that. I don't think it's right, but I also am amazed and love the output. So I would say I'm personally in a tough spot where I feel bad, but also excited and kind of amazed at what it's putting out. And I mean, you can say that all artists steal and everything is kind of based on previous generations and what they've seen. So, as long as it's not exact copies, novel art, I'll call it real art. How about you? Are you?
I mean, you brought up the, argument that every human was inspired by previous artists, right? So that's like the counter argument people make. But I definitely agree that like the scraping of all art should be somehow compensated. Because like, I think Stability AI did it the best, where they had like the opt-out option, so that any artist can opt out of the training data, so that their art is not included. I think that's really good. I mean, it's obviously much better than not asking them at all. But yeah, I mean, that's the tough part, because the result is really amazing. And it's like, after all, like, what is the difference between a person getting inspired by an artist and, AI neural network? Like, is it really the biology? Like, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. So building a company is really hard, and there are millions of ways it could go wrong. Based on your experience, what's the number one mistake new entrepreneurs make?
Yeah, I would say not talking to customers early and often. Building something out for too long, and I've made this mistake plenty of times myself. Is kind of being set on what you want to build and not talking to customers and making sure it's actually solving their problems and making sure it's actually something they want to use. I think a lot of people are just focused on building and get wrapped up in it and aren't kind of validating it along the way. So definitely early on, find core users, whether it's, hopefully something you have a relationship with it, not necessarily like a real life friend, but somebody online that that's a good, kind of perfect fit, and work with them however you can to ensure what you're building and monitor usage. I mean, even with, things like CreativeFuel that we're working on, getting it in people's hands, and then we can see, some usage statistics and things like that, and monitoring that and open lines of communication, I think, is key early on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, customers give you what the market actually wants. Like, in so many entrepreneurs have an idea in their head what their product should look like, but then once the market actually responds, it's often completely different.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, someone like myself, I don't actually create content myself. I don't have a YouTube channel, so I'm heavily relying on other people's feedback and comments. I think it's much easier if you're building a product that you're actually using yourself. But for the most part, I've been working on things in the YouTube space, and I don't have a YouTube channel. So other than testing the product here and there, I'm relying heavily on feedback from people.
That's interesting. So what actually made you choose the content creation space in the beginning?
Actually, before that, early on, I built a product for MySpace. For the younger viewers, that's before Facebook, MySpace social network, where it kind of automated. I was selling a surfing product, and I built this software that would kind of search for people in San Diego, in my area, who are interested in surfing, and then it would automate sending them messages about my product. So kind of a spammy product. But I started there, and kind of the whole, social network space. And then when YouTube came out, it just kind of felt like that was the next step in social media and kind of building communities, and just kind of randomly got in very early. I mean, I think my first product was before Google owned YouTube.
Wow.
When YouTube was still an independent company, I had a product that kind of helped grow your channel. So I've been there a long time.
It's fascinating. I mean, I think my average audience is like 35, so I think they'll know what MySpace is. So what practical skills do you think creators should focus on, coming in the future?
I think, a lot of it comes down to storytelling these days, it seems. As it gets easier and easier to create the content, storytelling and making sure the flow of your content really connects with your audience is going to be key, because it's going to get easier and easier to create the actual content itself. So I think focusing on keeping people engaged, storytelling, everything along those lines is going to be huge.
I agree. We've seen a massive shift from the biggest creators to storytelling, and I think that's the way to be authentic. I appreciate you taking the time to do the podcast, Phil.
Yeah, great to talk.
How to Build and Deploy AI Agents is launching in 2 days. So if you want to learn this valuable skill, join the community now, because the price will be increasing soon. Plus, I do offer a money back guarantee, so there's literally no risk. First link in the description.